What up, friends? Yesterday they announced August 18th will be the update to the new 3.22 as the potential start date. Now, if you're like me and you're looking for the next thing to play or the next build to put together or the next step in the adventure, well, I have something for you. Though you're going to need sunglasses, so I highly recommend you pause this video for a second or leave a comment down below yelling at me about how much you're going to need sunglasses or how much you're, how excited you are knowing that that's the next thing you're about to watch. But today I'm going to show you just an explosion of lights and colors. So for now, enjoy. I warned you. I told you, sunglasses. Now, as you can see playing in the footage in front of you, this build is awesome. It does everything I wanted to do, and this build was brought to me by my buddy Turtle. Turtle said our buddy Spike was playing it, and Bike showed us a couple of videos about it, and big shout out to him. You can find his information down below and link to the video that inspired all of this. This build just does everything that I wanted to do. It's colorful, it's flashy, it's explodey. It shows me all kinds of really cool stuff, and you see just from watching the clips in front of you, it's just blowing up all the content. Now, with a month and a half left in Crucible, or a month and some change, this is something I wanted to present to you. I've gotten a lot of wonderful comments from you guys. People have subscribed to the YouTube and turned on notifications looking for this video, and today I'm bringing it to you. Now, I mentioned this idea was brought to me by my buddy Turtle, and he got it from his buddy Bike, and it all started with a conversation that went like this. Hey, Trav, I got a wand. You want to trade? I'm like, a wand? He's like, you got a wand. You want to trade? I was like, bro, what do you got? And he links me the video, and I was hooked. Now, the adventure going down to put this together was a wild, wild ride. Now, note, I'm going to go over the gear, and at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you a different way that you can do things in the POE if you don't have the wand or you don't have the shield. This build will be expensive. This will be a typical Mageblood build, and you will need a lot of working parts to get it to work and function the way that you're watching it now. So if you want to go down this route and you want to spend the next month and some change working on this, I highly encourage you to, go down that road. And if you get stuck or you have issues or problems, come on over to the Discord. The Discord is insanely active. You can find a link to it down below. We'll walk you through everything you need to know about the build and just how to get it up and running and what you want to do with it. And don't hesitate to even come by the stream, even if I'm doing other things and you want to ask some questions, by all means, feel free to ask, and I'll happily point you in a direction that can hopefully get your issues solved with this. So let's click on over and take a look at it. This is the character. The fundamentals of the character all revolve and started with the wand. So we're going to begin there. As I mentioned, my buddy Turtle came up to me and he's like, hey, I've got a weapon. It's a wand. It's very cool. It's really important. And note, this is probably the most important part of the build and something that is, I would say, pretty mandatory. On the wand, node 5 of the Crucible tree says Blazing Salvo projectiles fork when they pass through a flame wall. This is pretty much the whole bread and butter of the build. Essentially, we shoot Kinetic Blast. Kinetic Blast will hit a mob and crit. That will trigger Blazing Salvo. That will fire Blazing Salvos. We have a Spell Slinger set up for Flame Wall. Those Blazing Salvos will go through the Flame Wall. They'll project it, fork, and bounce, and do all kinds of cool things. So this is the most important part of the weapon. Now note, the weapon on the tree also has Rampage. It is not needed. It is quality of life. It is fun. It is awesome. You do not need it. Projectiles have a 40% chance of an additional projectile when forking. Really good quality of life. You do not need it. You can get this on the skills tree. We have Pain Attunement. Once again, not needed. You can get it on the skills tree. And extra spell damage because more damage is great. Now with this Crucible skill tree that puts this build together, the only note, and I'll state this again, that you really need is the Blazing Salvo projectiles fork when they pass through a flame wall. Otherwise, you're pretty much good to go and you don't really need anything else. The wand in itself is crafted with a fracture of level of all spell skill gems, level of all fire skill gems. It has an Alva mod, or an Aceling mod for spell damage, and it has attack speed. The weapon itself does not need +1 to all spell skill gems. You could just use Essence of Woe until you hit +1 fire skill gems, and then do whatever you want for the last prefix. You can add added fire to spells. There's a lot of ways that you can go about crafting the wand. And like I said, if you have questions about crafting the wand, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below or come over to the Discord. I will help and gladly walk you through the steps needed to craft the wand. Crafting the wand does get expensive. Wands like this might exist. With only needing Crucible Node 5, you can actually probably buy a wand like this that's done and just slam Crucible Node 5 into wands until it goes, if you don't care about the rest of the Crucible tree. Now, the wand is the bread and butter. It is very important. Do not skimp out on the wand if you can afford to not skimp out on the wand, especially with Node 5, because it will not feel as good without Node 5. Moving over to the wand's gems, we have what we mentioned earlier. In the wand, we have our flame wall and our spell slinger setup. Pretty much that means is on my hotbar, I have spell slinger. If I cast kinetic blast without spell slinger active, you notice there's no flame wall. If I activate and I cast kinetic blast, because it's an attack, flame wall will trigger, and you can see pretty much all the kinetic blast passing through the flame wall. Now, my flame wall's radius is massive, and that's, really needed. Lastly, in the wand, we have haste. We just use haste for Val haste. It's not on my bars at the moment because I forgot to put it back on the bars when I was recording this video, and I wanted to show the flame wall, but usually I have Val haste here, and while I'm flying through a map and the haste comes up, I'll press the haste button. Moving over to complement the wand, we have our shield. Now, me personally, I went for a synthesized max frenzy shield. You do not need this. I went for this and built a shield that I knew I was going to bring to standard and put a little bit of extra time and effort into it because I wanted the shield for other projects also in the league. And when I found out that the league was possibly going to be extended through just logical guessing, I put a little extra money and time into the shield so that I can use it for other cool builds this league. Now, the shield has +1 maximum frenzy charges. You do not need to buy this base. This base is very expensive. But if you do choose to go down this route, you do want an armor evasion base or a pure evasion base, as you want to be able to get the possibility of spell suppression on the shield. Now, I currently do not have spell suppression on the shield, but it's just something to think about if you can't get it in other places. But if you have no choice and you want the synthesized shield, any will work. My shield currently, because I have Rampage, I did node 5 with shield charge, has the Rampage node. I currently am not using shield charge. I was using the Flame Dash. I'd go back and forth between the two depending on what I'm doing. This shield charge node with attack speed per Rampage is just quality of life. You do not need it. The nodes that are pretty important on the shield that I would recommend you getting, and the only one that I think is somewhat mandatory, is the 100% chance to avoid being shocked, as we'll pair this with Storm Shroud, and our shield gives us ailment immunity. If you can't get a shield with all the fancy stuff, at least try to aim for this, or if you get a nice crafted shield and you want to just slam this node onto your shield until it goes, this is a really, really solid node to have, and I highly recommend. Node 4, I have +1 maximum frenzy charges. Once again, you don't need this. All the extra frenzy charges are just more and more damage. I have -5 to maximum chaos res, +2 to all maximum elemental res. This is a nice defensive node. You can get this. It's not needed. You'll be a little squishier without it. But if you can get this plus this, you're pretty much chilling. And my node 1 was 45 max life. My node 1 ended up downgrading when I made the shield. I didn't know it downgraded. I crafted the shield. The shield was happy. I was like, all right, 45 life versus 50. You got me. I really don't know what else I would put in node 1 except maybe more fire damage. But I wanted the shield to be more universal, as I wanted to use it in other builds, and if I stuck on pure fire damage on node 1, I really didn't have the option to do a lot of other things. So I decided to go with 50 all life. It downgraded. I didn't notice. It's 45 to 50. I'm fine with it. The Crucible tree itself, the only thing, once again, that you need is the chance to avoid shock, as this will give you our ailment immunity. You can get ailment immunity in other places, but this is the easiest way to get it, in my opinion, assuming you have Storm Shroud or access to Storm Shroud. If you don't, I understand. The shield, for me, I crafted it with strength and int. I pretty much just took an int essence, slammed it into the shield until I got strength. You need a lot of strength and a lot of int for your skill gems. I locked my suffixes. I veiled Chaos Orb for a suffix. I tried to get base double damage because I didn't want to press more buttons. Instead, I got double damage while focused. I locked suffixes again. I reforged life. I hit tier 1 life. If you have trouble crafting the shield and you want to ask questions, I will repeat this like a broken record. Do not hesitate to come into the Discord. Do not hesitate to come and ask a million questions. I will be happy to talk to you guys about crafting all of the different items. The shield, we have enhanced support for Herald of Ash and Flame Dash. Nothing too fancy in terms of skill gems. Moving over to our helmet, we have an evasion-based helmet with fractured spell suppression. I was trying to get it labbed. There wasn't a labber that's been on. I want to get the Blazing Salvo enchant. I haven't been able to get it yet. If I get to the, if I get around to it, I'll get the helm labbed. I don't know if I am at this point because it can do everything. If you're looking for more damage and you're missing damage in other places, make sure you get your helm enchanted. The helmet itself is pretty simple. We got fractured spell suppression and we hit it with an essence for mana reservation. I got int in the suffix. I was pretty happy. I locked suffixes. I veiled chaos orbs until I got socket of AoE gems. And overall, the helmet itself is pretty straightforward. For Eater and Exarch, we wanted mana reservation as perfect because we need a lot of mana reservation. You notice by just looking right now while I'm talking, we don't have a lot of unreserved mana. We use all of our mana for all of our skills. And then for the Grand, I didn't really know what to get. I didn't finish it. I wasn't sure. You can get flammability effect. It's probably pretty good. I should probably actually go hit this with a Grand a couple of times because I didn't even realize I didn't finish it. I thought I did. Or I ran out of Grands. I don't remember. But in the helmet, we have our Anger, our Divergent Petrified Blood. Divergent is important because skills gain base life cost equal to minus 24% of base mana cost while not on the life. Our Anomalous Zealotry as we get more crit multi, and our Enlightened support. You're going to notice, just like in a lot of my builds, we use a lot of alt quality gems because I really like playing with Ashes of the Stars. So keep that in mind. Now, Ashes, once again, is a big crucial part to this build, and since we're talking about alt quality gems, we can kick on over to the Ashes. The Ashes allows us to have quality of all skill gems, +1 level to all skill gems, mana reservation. Ashes does a lot of things that'll tie the build together, and it just gives us a lot of quality in all of our alt skill gems that really push them to the moon. So if you can't afford a good Ashes, I would recommend buying a really badly rolled Ashes, and then if you have an extra divine or two, hit it into the Ashes. Odds are you'll get something really well. Mine right now is rolled at 19% mana reservation. That's pretty much the part that's important. More quality on the skill gems means more quality of life. If you can get the quality of skill gems high, you're really happy, but you're really looking for the increased reservation of skills. Moving on over to the body armor. The body armor is crazy. I know it looks like a mess, but it's actually not that bad to craft. Pretty much you just take a of the hunt crit strike chance and a of the hunt crit spell. An of the hunt crit strike chance and a Redeemer Frenzy on hit and slam them together. If you miss, there's another way to craft. You're pretty much just slamming a hunter chest and a Redeemer chest together, hoping for an open suffix, lock suffix, reforge crit to get the crit that you're missing. And then for the additional curse, we lock suffix again, we reforge caster, we get additional curse, and then we ashling for increased life and mana. If you have trouble crafting the chest and you can't find one to buy, ask. I will walk you through all the additional steps. There is a world where you have a Redeemer and a Hunter chest and you just kind of do reforge attack or reforge crit until you hit the frenzy mod and then do some other stuff and get it all done. I happen to have elevated frenzy. You do not need elevated frenzy. The way I made my chest was convoluted. It was very chaotic. We were just kind of testing a bunch of different crafting methods to find the best way to make the chest. I hit it with an Orb of Dominance because I was just kind of messing around, hoping to elevate something else. And this is what we got. And I just kind of lived with it. And I mean, I'm not complaining. It's nice, but you don't need it. We are doing this on an Assassin's Garb, though, because we want increased movement speed. If you do not want increased movement speed, there are a lot of really good bases you could choose to your heart's content. It does not need to be done in an Assassin's Garb. I just like the extra movement speed. In our chest, we're going to be using Awakened Fire Pen support. We are using a fire skill as our main damaging skill, so we want to just have more damage to go through our enemies. We're going to be tying it with Anomalous Kinetic Blast. Anomalous because it pierces additional targets. And as you noticed, we hit in all kinds of directions. We hit really hard, really fast, and we want to make sure we pierce as many targets as possible. We're going to be using Divergent Blazing Salvo. Divergent, very important because we get a ton of extra fire damage as extra chaos damage. And because it's paired with Ashes, instead of it being 5, we get 12. So Ashes doubles it up. So we get a lot of damage. We're going to be doing Awaken Greater Multiple Projectiles. Divergent Inspiration. Divergent Inspiration because it reduces the mana cost. And lastly, Awaken Cast on Crit. Now, note for this to work and this to be really smooth, we want Awaken Cast on Crit level 6. It's not very expensive to buy an Awaken Cast on Crit. I really recommend you do it. The +3 levels from skills on our tree puts it to 9, which gives us a lot of CDR, which helps us to crit and cast quite often. Now, something I'm going to say that's pretty cool. You'll notice in the video when you watch, there was 4,672,592 projectiles, and that's a lot of projectiles. That's because of a couple of things. Divergent Blazing Salvo itself fires 7 projectiles. Greater Multiple Projectile fires another 5. Sniper's Mark adds another 5. They pass through the flame wall. They split through the flame wall. And then they go out. They hit the flame wall. They split. They fork. They hit the mobs. Sniper's Mark triggers. They hit. They fork. They break apart. And the 14 projectiles that you fire, it turns out to be 400. And then if you had the helmet chant, it'd be 402. Or some number a lot higher. But that's pretty much how that's all working and why we have things tied up the way that we do like that. Now moving over to the left, you'll notice we have Nimis. Nimis is the thing that makes the projectiles return to us. Unfortunately, the projectiles firing in random directions, kind of like a downside, but whatever. But we want the Blazing Salvo projectiles to shoot out, hit the mobs, shoot out through the flame wall, hit the mobs, bounce, fork, pierce, do all that fun stuff. And then they return to us in a shotgun fashion, and then they all overlap and they hit all the same enemy. So we kind of run around, we fire a little bit, our projectiles shoot out, and then they come right back on top of us and just... That's how that works. To tie the other ring in, I managed to find a Curse with Flammability ring with fire damage. This ring was 6 divines. The guy had it listed, I just bought it. You just need flammability on hit. If you can't find a synthesized mod, you can find a mod that has flammability and a suffix. I think they're from Delve. There's also one of the Conquerors has a flammability mod on it too. I don't remember which one off the top of my head. But if you can't find this base and you're having trouble crafting the ring, just ask. We'll look up on Path of Exile which of the Conquerors has flammability, and we can figure out a way to craft the ring. I made this ring by using an essence for crit multi until I hit tier 1 fire damage. You do not need to do this. Tier 1 fire damage is extra damage. We do want the crit multi. That's pretty much free from... Speaking of bikes, what up, bike? Thanks for the build. The timing on that. So pretty much we want to use the essence for crit multi until fire damage. The extra fire damage is nice. You do not need it. You can go for double resistance. I use the essence until I hit fire damage. I remove the last suffix. I lock suffixes. I reforge chaos for chaos resistance. I lock suffixes again. I veiled chaos orbed for life. And then I just crafted on minus channeling skills. And then I slammed on an exalted orb, and that's what we got. The ring itself and the craft is pretty straightforward. It wasn't very costly at all to craft. Fire damage is pretty common to hit. Moving over to our gloves are really, really, really nice, and I didn't skimp out on the gloves, and I'm very happy I didn't skimp out on the gloves. Our gloves have fractured spell damage, or spell suppress. I'm gonna say fractured spell damage. I use an essence for increased attack speed, and I get more int. Now you do not, depending on how things go, you might not need as much int as I did. I was doing some weird shenanigans with leadership's price, so you could probably actually recraft the gloves and they can be super nice. You can go for a culling strike and some other stuff, but I like the gloves the way they are because I haven't figured out how to get a nerve in other places yet. But essentially, I just hit my gloves with an essence until I got int. I lock suffixes, veiled chaos orb until I hit AoE gems, and that was that. For the Eater of Worlds and Searing Exarch, we really want perfect fire exposure for minus 16% of fire resistance. The more negative fire resistance, the better. You can get away with Grand. Grand's only like 14%. The extra 2% might not be worth it if your budget doesn't cut it. But I think if you're like going knee deep on this, the extra 2% might be worth it. On nerve, 25% chance I think is really good. You could do 20. You might just not as nerve on often. 1 in 4 versus 1 in 5. So, you know, take it how you will. If you have all the extra grands and they're available, I would hit it. Now, for the gloves, we have Anomalous Blood and Sand, because we want to use Anomalous Blood and Sand for projectile speed while on sand stance. We have Anomalous Defiance Banner, because Anomalous Defiance Banner gives us increased armor evasion. Arrogance support, so everything's reserved on life, and Anomalous Precision. I don't think you need the 21. I'm pretty sure you don't need the 21. I happen to have 21 from the last build that I did, so I kind of stuck it in there. Anomalous, very important though. We want the increased mana reservations. Moving over, we see on the belt, typical Mageblood belt, but the difference between this Mageblood and others is I did manage to get this belt enchanted while I was running labs. I got the Unnerve, gives you 50% increased spell critical strike chance. This is kind of important as you need all the spell critical strike chance that you can get, as you want to make sure that you are hitting everything and it's critting and it's guaranteed. So you might need to run labs to get this belt enchant. I think there's like 9 belt enchants. It shouldn't take too long as the lab layout's not miserable. But if you don't have this right away, you'll be okay. You do need Mageblood. You could probably get away with a different belt if you do some other shenanigans with like Flask Effect. But for me, I built it around Mageblood because the Flask were really important. I'm using the reduced mana cost of skills. I want my Kinetic Blast to be as low as possible, but I want to make sure that my Blazing Salvo still costs mana, or my Firewall, my Blazing Salvo still costs mana. I was going to say Firewall. I want my Blazing Salvo to still cost mana to trigger the inspiration, but I need the Kinetic Blast to be 0. We have 90 mana, so it's just enough mana for it to work. So I needed this to happen. Any more or higher mana cost reduction, the Blazing Salvo gets too low, and the skills don't really work the way I want them to do, and I don't trigger inspiration. Silver Flask for Onslaught, so we move pretty fast. You'll notice we have pretty good movement speed. If I take off the silver, or the Onslaught Flask, we move a lot slower. So we want to really have that movement speed to tie it all together. I like the movement speed a lot. The same reason why I tied it with the Assassin's Guard. Now the Diamond Flask, pretty self-explanatory. 100% global crit chance, 70% increased effect. We want to make sure that we crit. I tie it with regenerates 3% of life per second. If you don't have the Unnerve on the belt with the spell crit strike chance, you can get crit in the base of one of your flasks, and that should really help tie things together. And then lastly, I have a Jade Flask for a ton of evasion and just additional resistances. This is how I tie all of my resistances together. And Mageblood is really good for that. And then I pair everything with Progenesis because it's insanely strong and super powerful and ties really well with Petrified Blood. Now, looking at the boots, we'll notice right away that for our boots, we have the very interesting, very unique cooldown recovery rate. I feel like it's a running trend between my last video and this one, or my last build guide and this one. We have increased cooldown recovery rate. The more, the better. I haven't divined these boots up because I haven't really need to. We have Onslaught with elevated Onslaught, elevated cooldown. We slam them together. I managed to get tier 1 cold resistance. I was pretty thrilled with my last suffix. I locked my suffixes. I reforged crit for a Redeemer. I got elusive. I was really happy. I Ashling, got more Onslaught. I guess I was looking, I was just seeing what I would get for a movement speed. I crafted on life. The boots are super simple and easy to put together. If you get stuck and you don't really know how to awaken absorb them, don't hesitate to ask. I will give you a step-by-step. But the TLDR is elevated Onslaught, elevated cooldown, and slam them together. In our boots, we had mentioned Sniper's Mark earlier. Sniper's Mark is huge as it gives us 1 billion projectiles for everything. The Divergent Mark on hit is really cool. Divergent because it gives us more damage. More damage is really good. We're going to use Anomalous Sealskin as one of our only defensive layers because we just kind of like press a button and we have Sealskin and we hope it's good enough to keep us alive. Knock on wood, we don't die. And then we have Enhanced Support to just kind of kick everything up. So we've looked at the gear, we've looked at the Crucible trees, we looked at the skill gems. All that's left to talk about is the Ascendancy and the passive trait. For our Ascendancy, we chose the really beefy, wonderful Trickster. Trickster was actually a really cool choice. It gave us a lot of defensive layers and offensive layers. I actually have never played the reworked Trickster, so this was kind of cool and a lot of fun to me. I really got a kick out of it. Heartstopper, I was very on the fence about. 40% of the time, you just take less damage from hits, and 40% of the time, I'm standing in a serious beam, and I'm just like, or a shaper beam, and I'm like, come at me, bro. So it's pretty cool. Heartstopper's interesting. You know, sometimes you're dead from one thing, and sometimes you're dead from another thing. It's pretty cool defensive layer. Polymath for more damage for each type of mastery you've allocated. We have a ton of masteries allocated. We're going to gain 1% of life for each different type of mastery, 1% of energy shield for each type of mastery. Pretty much take a bunch of different masteries, gain a bunch of damage, gain a bunch of recovery. Escape Artist for evasion rating per 1 maximum energy shield and equip helmet. We pretty much need to take Escape Artist to go to Soul Drinker. Soul Drinker gives us 2% of damage, leeches energy shield, 20% increased attack damage and cast damage while leeching energy shield, and energy leech are not removed. So it's over leech for energy shield, pretty much meaning if I hit something, I'm leeching, and if I'm leeching, I'm not dying, and if I'm not dying, I'm attacking and casting faster. Now, our tree is a little bit all over the place. We come down here to Charisma right away. Charisma gives us mana reservation efficiency. We take the Mastery for increased damage. We come over here to the Evasion, Revenge of the Hunted, which gives us spell suppression while on full life. I would not bank on the 10% spell suppression while on full life. I mean, yeah, you're on full life often, but like, you know, if you're not in full life, you're down 10%. So keep that in mind. We have 15% chance from the Mastery to spell smash. That is not easy to say fast or often. But we take this to have 50% chance to spell suppress if we have crypt, helmet, body armor, gloves, and boots all have evasion. We go back and look, we have evasion, 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 and evasion. So this gives us another 15%. Moving on over, we take this gem socket for Rational Doctrine. Rational Doctrine is important because it gives us Profane Ground. As long as our int is the highest of our attributes, we have Profane Ground. So, yes, I have int on a lot of stuff. If you're not going to do the Rational Doctrine, you're probably going to have crit issues. It's not very hard to keep your int higher than everything else, so it should be relatively easy to get your int pretty high while doing it. Now, moving over, I know there's a whole top to the tree, but we're going to work our way down and then work our way up. We're going to take this jewel socket for a large cluster. We want 35% increased effect, attack speed, and then kind of whatever else you can get. But the attack speed is the really important part, is we want to make sure that we're attacking fast enough to deal a lot of damage to trigger our stuff all the time. I know with Cyclone, you want to aim for 10.1 attacks per second. Kinetic Blast is a little different, as you'll never really hit those weird breakpoints that you need to min-max things. But we try to get as much attack speed as we can, where we can, to really put us over the edge. Our medium cluster is a basics of pain and pressure points. This gives us increased critical strike damage, or increase in critical strike chance, and a ton of damage. We'll stick our Storm Shroud in here. We talked about Storm Shroud earlier. It gives us a chance to have, or our shield gives us 100% chance to avoid shock. This gives us ailment immunity. Our second cluster is going to be a quick getaway and pressure points. Critical strike chance again, cast and movement speed, and pretty much critical strike chance double damage. And then we pair it with a Watcher's Eye. I managed to find a double anger Watcher's Eye for super cheap. This one was like 6 divines. The guy just had it up. It was up for like a week, so I bought it. This gives us critical strike multi and increased fire damage. There's a lot of options for Watcher's Eyes. I really encourage you to go search around. If you just take some time and look and explore the different skills and different outcomes, you can find some really cool ones. Again, Innervate for prevent extra spell damage and the entire spell suppression wheel. We're going to take Heartseeker for more crit multi and these small nodes for critical strike chance. We take the Mastery for +3 level of critical support gems. This ties in really well with our Awaken Cast on Crit, which makes it level 9. I'm putting an Intuitive Leap in this gem socket so that I can grab Fervor, Acuity, Herbalism, Survivalist, Survivalist for all res and more evasion, Fervor for maximum frenzy charges, Herbalism for max life, and Acuity for attack speed and accuracy. Moving my way up the tree, you're going to notice that we have a socket for Militant Faith. This one is increased elemental damage and effect of non-curse auras. You can get minus mana cost of skills. If you're not using your Mageblood or you're having trouble with your mana, just double check it doesn't mess with your inspiration too much. And there's a lot of other options. I really like this one a lot, especially if you're not having mana issues. This one I think is a lot of power. We're going to take Frantic to go alongside this. As you'll see, we have a running theme that we take a lot of frenzy charges. We have frenzy charges on the shield, frenzy charge on the Crucible shield, frenzy charges on the tree. We're going to take the accuracy node over here for depth perception for critical strike chance and accuracy rating. We're going to take the accuracy mastery for more accuracy. We're going to take the life mastery for blood drinker, so we have recover life on kill. Especially in that deli map that you saw me doing earlier, we're constantly killing mobs, so we're constantly regenerating life. The life mastery says we count on low life. We'll have 55% of maximum life or below. We take the leash mastery, so 10% of our leech is instant. So we're leeching life, we're leeching energy shield. We have clever thief for attack and mana leech. And we have life and mana on hit, so that we can gain a bunch of life and gain a bunch of mana. You really don't worry about any mods on your maps because you have a lot of redundancies and a lot of things. So like this kind of like prevents like the leech maps. No regen's a little tricky, but I mean, as long as you're hitting something, you're regenning anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Moving up, we take the mana mastery for increased mana reservation efficiency of skills. We have a lot of skills that we talked about, and we want to make sure everything fits. Mind Drinker for more mana. We have Soul Thief, so that we can get increased evasion, more energy shield, recover energy shield on kill. You'll notice we pair that, it pairs really well with Blood Drinker. So we have Soul Thief for energy shield on kill, Blood Drinker for life on kill, and then going back to over here, we have Soul Drinker, and we have Polymath. So we have a lot of layers that say gain a lot of life when you kill things, and a lot of layers that say gain a life when you hit things. So as long as we're hitting things, we're pretty beefy. Coming up over here, we take Doomcast for more critical strike chance for spells and crit multi for spells. The crit mastery for critical strike multiplier against unique enemies. We're going to come over here for Written in Blood for just raw life, raw energy shield, some strength. And our stun threshold is based on 60% of your energy shield instead of life. Now we're always hitting, we're always recovering, so we always have full energy shield, so we're never really getting stunned. The reservation mastery plus influence, 14% increased effect of non-curse auras. Reservation efficiency for more RMR, and then auras from your skills have 10% increased effect. We have a lot of auras that provide us a lot of damage and a lot of really cool stuff, so we want to make sure that we're kicking that up to the max. Now, before we go into this cluster over here, I just want to come up here and talk about why we went this way. Originally, before we had the wand, we wanted Pain Attunement. So if you don't have Pain Attunement, you want to get Pain Attunement on your skill tree. And then we have Blood Notch over here, which will pair with the other cluster jewel. And we have Leaf Shade over here, so we take 50% less damage over time if you started taking damage over time in the past 10 seconds. So this is pretty much, we take this so that we don't just completely die to Shaper Beam and we don't just immediately die to Sirius. Without Leaf Shade, you pretty much fall over to any damage over time effects. When this triggers plus Heartstopper, you can just stand in Shaper Beams and not really have to worry. Otherwise, this gives you the opportunity to get hit by a Shaper Beam and kind of get the heck out of dodge. Now, I know I mentioned Pain Attunement, and Pain Attunement is on our weapon. Now, my character right now is level 98, so if I was going to 100, 99 would be Pain Attunement, and then 100 would be points into here. So, split shot. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. If on your wand, you do not have 40% chance for an additional projectiles when forking, you can actually get this on the skill tree by taking split shot. So I'm going to make a note. If your wand does not have Pain Attunement and your wand does not have projectiles, you can get split shot on the tree and change this cluster to not be a 12. It could be 8 with the same effect. And you go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you get Pain Attunement here. I'll make a note of that so you can skip back to this. Don't worry. Now, going up to the cluster jewel that we mentioned earlier, this is actually a 3 passive voices. At the time of recording, these were like 30 divine. Let me double check. Like 40 or like 40. They're like 40. So I paid like 30 divines when I bought it, but at the time of recording, they were about 40. We need the 3 passive voices because we don't have a lot of skill points and a lot of room to fit everything. In here, we're going to take our cluster for basics of pains and pressure point. Pressure points and basics of pain, just like earlier, they give us increased critical strike chance and just flat damage. And we have immutable force to go with our Blood Notch so that we take hits from stuns and our stun and our life is recovered. It's just a really cool defensive layer. you just get stunned. You have stun recovery. You can't be stunned. You gain a lot of life. You gain more life. You get stunned. You get hit. You don't die. You take a hit. You recover life. It goes to petrified blood. Your life pool is infinite. TLDR, your life pool is infinite. Now, if you can't afford a 3 passive voice and you want to just get like a medium cluster here, put the medium cluster in and gain immutable force, that's fine too. I have the 3 passive voice because I take a Forbidden Flame and a Forbidden Flesh setup for Perfect Crime. Perfect Crime. Yes, Perfect Crime. You're sitting here like, what the heck is Perfect Crime? See these little guys? These little guys? These little guys? These are my Perfect Crime buddies. So whenever I cast my Blazing Salvo Kinetic Blast, if I were to show you really quick, so let's just go take a map and let's just like kind of do this. Sure. When I put this map in, I will show you the difference between Perfect Crime and no Perfect Crime. These little guys are trigger bots and they cast with me. So if I go over here and I find a pack of mobs and I attack, you'll see over here in the right, they were casting spells. Now, if I open up my Atlas tree and I take off Perfect Crime and I lose them and I go to attack, you'll notice that I'm not getting all the extra explosions. So if your computer can't handle this build or you start playing it and you realize your computer's exploding and your graphics card is holding on for dear life, you can actually take off Perfect Crime and just kind of go through the map and you'll notice right away it's not as hectic. And if I were to put this back in and to get my trigger bots back and I were to start going through again, you'll see right in the back of the map, they're casting and those Blazing Salvos are coming from off screen as they're trying to catch up to where I'm moving and attack mobs. You can actually see them casting off the screen because the trigger bots are trying to keep up. The trigger bots are really, really, really nice. They add a metric, and I mean a metric ton of damage. You do not need them. They are quite awesome, but you do not need them. Now, the POE to this build is in the description down below. I can go over the POE if you'd like, but it just pretty much says damage to the moon, projectiles to the moon. If you have any questions or it's confusing, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below and ask me about it. I know this video is running a little long already, and I wanted to just kind of give you the basics of everything that was going on and how it all functions and how it works together. So we've covered all the gear, we've covered all the skill gems, we've covered the tree, and if you put it together and you like it and you try it, let me know. If you think about trying it, let me know. If you've tried it and you've burned up your eyes and your retinas and your video card, blame Bike. It wasn't me. Bike did it. But for now, friends, I'm going to get this out to you. And if you guys have other cool videos or ideas or builds or farming strategies you want to see me talk about or cover, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. I'd love to test out and explore all your thoughts. Currently, I'm doing a solo self-found run on Icicle Mines, and I have Winter Mines as I'm toying with the idea of a league starter. So for now, friends, I'm going to get this out to you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.